Maybe we can start with a quick round of introduction, starting from Tony on the far side.
Sure. I'm Tony. Some people call me Anthony. I've been working on FreeSWITCH since it was conceived and invented in the mid-2000s. Yeah.
You've heard from me. We heard from you a few times already. So, Brian. Well, likewise, Brian.
I've been working with Anthony since the early 2000s as well, since before FreeSWITCH existed, and have been along for the ride the entire time.
I'm Michael Jerris. I've been around, I guess, also from the beginning. Been along for the whole ride. Yeah.
Has it been fun?
No.
Good. Yeah. At least you're honest.
Been horrible.
Hi, I'm Chris. I've been a user and contributor of FreeSWITCH since about 2008, and been with SignalWire now 6 years, and so now I'm helping out to continue to maintain and improve FreeSWITCH.
Hi, I'm Jakub. I'm working in a FreeSWITCH team for almost 3 years now.
I have a few questions for you. Well, it goes back and forth. So one thing I would like to start from is, as everybody knows, FreeSWITCH has been immensely successful, not only in the hands of, let's say, enthusiasts and small-scale businesses, but it does power many large-scale enterprises and platforms. What do you think has made FreeSWITCH so successful? We'll start by,
It works better than this microphone system. That's one reason it's successful. Also because it's developed by the people that use it just as much as it is by us. The feedback that we got during the time when we were forming it, plus a lot of instincts, came out with a kind of winning combination.
Mike?
What the success comes from? Perseverance. Like we've spent 20 years just going and going and going, and every problem we hit, just bowling through it and making it work. So eventually the other side of that, you
get there.
You get something a lot more stable.
Jakub, what do you think? What do you like about FreeSWITCH?
Yeah, I like that, that FreeSWITCH is used in the, very wisely, in the totally different. When I first time when I used FreeSWITCH, I noticed that it opens very, big opportunities for lots of, customers, because I'm seeing, every day what customers are doing, what problems we have, and so on. So I see how widely FreeSWITCH is used. So this is something which made FreeSWITCH so popular.
Okay, yeah. And FreeSWITCH works better than the microphone system for now, but we'll make the microphone system better. Maybe we can put the microphone on FreeSWITCH. Aside from the development cycle and the fact that it's open source and accessible and easy to understand, I feel like one of my favorite features of FreeSWITCH is how modular it is. What do you think have been the most, what are the most popular modules? What are the things people are doing that are not standard? Like outside of classic telephony, what are the weirdest use case you've heard of? It'll be interesting too.
We had somebody use, they've used it for a submarine simulator in the Navy.
Explain.
They use it as the control of the simulator in training, with like an Xbox 360 controller as well. It's interesting use case.
Well, I don't think I can beat that. I've built some wacky applications, but not a submarine simulator.
There's a guy in Brazil that was using the conference module for a network video recorder for security cameras.
Okay, well, that I can see.
There was someone that was controlling jail cell doors with SIP using it.
Okay, well, I hope to have a good firewall.
Yeah, one wrong SIP mistake and you let someone out of prison by accident.
Sorry for the interruption. It's on. Oh, cool, perfect. So let's hope this keeps working. So yeah, the jail is really interesting. So just make sure your SBC is configured correctly. You know, you never one wrong invite, and well, you got a problem. That's far. Well, the other thing that has been very interesting to me, reflecting on the FreeSWITCH project, it's not only how widely used it is, but how long it's been kept going. Because I have been part of open source projects. Some of them have had a useful life of a few years. Then people started using something else, or it just sort of died off, and it became a stable thing that's always the same. What do you think has been the key to keeping FreeSWITCH running for so long? Because again, it's probably one of the most widely used long-running projects. There's few that are older. Maybe Brian.
Modular and adaptable. It's able to change rapidly to meet new demands that we discover or dream up new stuff. So it stays relevant by being able to be agile.
For sure.
Add that also some of the stuff in there was plumbed decades in advance, and then it seems like, oh, look what they changed it to do, and it was already anticipated sometimes. There's like secrets all over the place.
Yeah,
things that we just built and expected to use one day, and then dusted off when the time finally comes. Very, very like maybe well-planned core.
For sure, yeah. Some things have been used recently that were placed there years ago. Well, this is a good question for Chris. As someone who came to the project later, because, well, they know FreeSWITCH, what made you use FreeSWITCH?
It was, well, it was very easy to understand. You know, I learned about the project. We had some old equipment that was end of life. It cost us a lot of money to replace it, and yeah, and we found this FreeSWITCH project, and we were missing a few things, but the modularity of the project, you know, made it very easy for us to add what was missing, and it also made it easy for us to add whatever special applications we needed or function that we needed. That was special to our use cases, and it was easy to then stay in sync with the upstream. And you know, when I went onto the IRC channel, I remember that I used to hang out in there all the time, and everyone was always so helpful. You know, especially like Brian was one of the first people I talked to at IRC, and yeah, it was just a no-brainer. All I had to do was just had to convince my bosses to let me do the work to get it going, and once we got the okay, it's, you know, it's been here we are today, you know.
I don't know why, but to me, Brian was always mean on IRC. I don't know why. Me specifically, you didn't like me. It was just getting like single word responses. Like I will type a well-crafted question about a bug or something I was saying something, and it just respond no, or untrue. Untrue was a specialty. Untrue.
I thought that was my bit.
Don't forget,
no,
next
you
in
were
all caps with 2 exclamation points.
Yeah.
The interesting thing listening to everyone talk about it is, for me, the way Chris was describing reminds me of the last years with SignalWire, that where we've done the same thing, where FreeSWITCH almost did everything we wanted to do, and we treat it the same way ourselves, where, okay, we just need to add this feature to work with this clustering system and this feature to work with this messaging system, and we build our own stuff around the open source in the same way.
I think that to keep a project going for this long and add this quality, you need 2 things. A strong support, maybe a sponsor, which we'll talk about later, but also a good community. So that's also very good. Aside from Brian saying untruth for everything I will say, I felt like there was a very good strength of the whole community. Always someone to help, someone you can ask questions to. They occasionally actually give you the answer, and in general, it will be a very good experience for me too. Like I started using FreeSWITCH, I think in 2009 or 10, probably first project in 2009, and it was a great onboarding experience. So speaking of the community, how many people have committed to FreeSWITCH code over the years? Do you know more or less? I think we ran the numbers
It's on
here.
GitHub. Oh, I don't know the exact number. It's probably in the thousands.
In the thousands?
Some people have like
It is
one
in the
little
thousands.
change. Some people are maintenance people. They just commit changes to the build system. There's code submissions. And
I'm on there too, with one change, like one liner or
yeah,
something.
all you gotta do is like you could fix a typo and then you get your name in there.
So go check out the GitHub repo and see if you can help. And if you have a bug you can fix, this is the moment to ask, because everybody's here, they can't run. So just ask, raise your hand. And well, I think so for now, FreeSWITCH has gotten us a long way, and it will certainly get us farther in the future. So what do you think the future holds for telco in general? I know that's sort of a generic question, but it's also tied to what we're going to put in FreeSWITCH next. Like, what do you think are going to be the next big things?
So, well, my opinion's pretty biased, probably because it revolves around my own vision. Though I think I used that same vision to create FreeSWITCH in the first place. So where I see it now is, I think this isn't new for me. It was about 2008 when it was kind of like when the apple fell on my head, kind of analogy. That it was important to put clusters together, to use the things from the web that were starting to appear, like had to be merged with telecom. And I think that all this kind of old school, like 1970s telecom signaling and stuff has to evolve so that it's congruent with applications on mobile and web. And so I started imagining, you know, like FreeSWITCH all over the planet, GoBot FreeSWITCH to grow and get really big, like Voltron or something, taking all the kind of technology and being able to just like put it where it needs to go just in time, making like a modular giant cloud ecosystem of it. Like I wanted to do that. I had 5 names for it, like along the way, going all the way back to like 2008, and it was always some version of the same thing, and there was a lot of fog of war back then, but like the whole time I've been imagining, like pieces of it started to come out as early as like 2013, to make it so that it would have the hooks it needed to plug into its next kind of thing above it. Like you think of it as a stack, like FreeSWITCH is sort of the end of a stack, and then everyone else has to build the rest of the puzzle. And we thought that we should add like another couple layers and then let people finish that new, more scalable, stretched around the world puzzle, because it all depends on what your use case is though, because you can still like FreeSWITCH on a bank of in a rack could power an entire country. You could take one of those IBM racks that has a whole bunch of servers in it, like are all blades, and you could run a telecom for an entire country. So you want to do that, you want to do it old school and all those things, all that works fine still. But when you want to do some of these more modern things where we're talking about like following all these rules at high speed and dealing with compliance and having all the, you know, your data where it needs to be, and the world, people talking across the world more and needing to reduce latency because there's only so much, you know, speed of light's limitation on the data. So you got to deal with all that. So being able to kind of move around and physically deploy infrastructure where it needs to go, very important, because the regular telecom is just, we're not going to last another 10 years just on like undersea cables with analog data going through it.
For sure. Well, maybe Mike, you think the industry is going?
I think in a lot of lovely ways we've made telecom very boring. So the getting audio from point A to point B is not a super interesting problem anymore, but the things that we interact with is an interesting thing now. So the kind of things we put energy into is, what does a modern day interface into AI look like, and how do we make those features really easy to use and really, you know, easy to make an impact on the world. So those are the kind of problems, how you interact problems, as opposed to this protocol, making it work, or interoperating with this. Like, those problems became very boring some years ago. Now it's how do we make an impact in the world kind of problems. More interesting.
I do agree that in the protocol or codec area, there's not much coming up. I mean, maybe a couple codecs.
They keep making assertions they're going to come up with a new one out of the browsers, and
Yes, I'm sure at some point maybe
It'll
like
come
to
out.
drag their feet, but you'll see like machine learning and AI codecs that will make reduce the pain. 'Cause usually a codec either uses a lot of bandwidth or a lot of CPU, so you can figure out how to crack one of those. You'll get cool new things.
Yeah, I think.
But if someone comes up with it right now, it'll be like, I don't know if you saw Abby's speech earlier, but people hate changing stuff, including Chrome. You add a feature, and then they don't even add it for 10 more years, and then they finally add experimental, and you just got to like beg them to, you know, I've got tickets open for 4 years trying to change one thing about the spec in WC3, so.
Yeah, Chrome is not exactly easy to interact with at times.
So it's whenever it actually works, plus however long it takes them to be willing to let everybody use it. Because they're kind of being walled garden with the browsers. Like, and they do what they want, not what everybody else wants per se. So that's the kind of, you got to work around things. But that's always been, we've been doing that since there's been the internet. You know, when browsers were new, the JavaScript wasn't even the same in them, so you couldn't even make the same website the same way. You had to make it only as good as the worst one. And sometimes we have to emulate those things with these telecom protocols too. We emulate the mistakes, we accept the mistakes, we try and do it right, but we can tell it's not going to work, so then we just pretend we're dumb and do it wrong on purpose. And then people will come to us because, you know, they have some old fancy switch that never in a million years will they fix. So they're just telling us to, you know, can you do this wrong so that my switch will accept my traffic?
For sure.
That kind of stuff. But
Maybe Jakub, as someone who's relatively new to the project, what have you seen happen in these 3 short years that was interesting? What's new in FreeSWITCH?
What was really new? So we are from development point of view, we are, you know, keeping FreeSWITCH going, and so there were like no special, you know, new features, like, you know, super features which could like change, you know, which could be like game changers for something. But I mean, like, you know, like keeping FreeSWITCH like stable, keeping in a good, you know, performance. So this is what we do. And yeah, and that makes, you know, big like impact, you know, and to have a stable core, yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
every time another Debian comes out,
Yeah, to redo the thing, yeah.
that's bit rot instantly across almost every piece of everything, and the dependencies underneath it. So when you build software on top of an ecosystem that also has more dependencies, so those events cause lots of mayhem. I think I was talking about that the other day. Like they do it for fun, I swear. Like whoever makes compilers like is trying to figure out how to break everybody's code on purpose, and it's like Schadenfreude, you know, like imagining all those poor people out there like dealing with things. Yeah, it worked yesterday. I upgraded my compiler, and now it won't build anymore. And it takes me a month to fix all these little weird things. Oh, this is obsolete now, so I can never do it again. Now I have to change it. I'll have to do this and this. The next thing you know, it's like 5 layers deep of like sub-dependencies, and then you go insane.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Qmail, the mail server, now won't install unless you have a fully qualified domain name as the host name for the machine, whether or not you're going to use Qmail. I found this morning. So right now, my Docker file doesn't build. And it's got nothing to do with FreeSWITCH.
Yeah,
Closer.
No, I mean, one of the things, there's a couple things that we did do. I mean, I know you guys, you and Andre did some work for, we added what, ARM64 support? We
FFmpeg.
Use your mic.
Yeah, it's ARM FFmpeg. So yeah, we make like, you know, like FreeSWITCH. So when there is an upgrade of FFmpeg, for example, then we keep, you know, FreeSWITCH up to date. Yeah, so yeah.
It's a bit of a pain, right, with FFmpeg too this time around?
Yeah, it is a pain. Yeah, last time it was like, you know, we had to put a lot of effort to actually rebuild recreate, the stuff, both for encrypting and decrypting, decoding and encoding. Yeah, so that was, sometimes it's a bit challenging. Sometimes where it's like, minor change, it's like, few lines of code to change, but sometimes like 800 or 1,000, yeah. So
yeah, they like to
really
deprecate
depends.
everything. They give you like one release cycle warning. Like you have to change all your code. We didn't like our own API design, so now you got to change it. It happens like constantly. And it's kind of like a dependency hub, right? FFmpeg loads and then in turn its own modules, which there are thousands of, and then it has dependencies, and then it also has all these bit rot problems. So, or if there's a bug in it, it doesn't come out very often. So then we have to start building it ourselves and preempt the one in the OS. Those are kinds of things that are just like, they're not exciting to talk about, but it like melts your face when you start thinking about it, because you're like, you can't trust the operating system. It only comes out like every 5 years or something, and when there's bugs, they schedule them for like this time next year that should come out, and everyone's like, help, my software's dying. And so then we have to put out these like our own packages to sit in front of the real ones, and then we start getting into building dependencies for people and stuff too, which that's the only way to solve it. Otherwise, you're just going to have like fires everywhere. So
I find that interesting, in fact. Like, I know it's not as exciting as implementing a new codec or whatever, but this shows how to keep going something so big and so modular does require a lot of attention. Like, dependency stack goes 10 levels deep. You never know what's next to figure out.
Speaking of dependencies, we recently had to preempt the libopus because of a bug in the library itself that was triggered by Yealink phones. So that was a fun, interesting one. In addition, we've had time to focus on, with the team, to focus on like how we debug complex issues. And we have fixed things I've been searching for literally 16 years and getting those done. And in the process, finding, 35 other little bugs around that one. So it's sometimes an onion of a problem.
Yeah. Oh, when there's dependencies involved, it's always like.
And some bugs are like different. Some are like serial killers. You find there's a bug and things keep going wrong, but you can't catch them. And some are more like going postal, where it's obvious, crashes every time you do the same thing. We like those better. It's much easier to diagnose. But
if you can make it happen, it's always easier to chase them.
Yeah, sometimes there's one that only happens one every like 5 million times that there's a chance for it to happen, and then it's very hard to. You have to up those odds. You have to even figuring out like what the proximity of what's happening to cause the bug, and then maybe you can up your odds by, making 5 million calls as fast as you can, so that you'll get more repetition on it. If you wait for it to happen in the wild, it might only get one per year, and a lot of people just don't even tell you, that, well, whatever, it works so well, it crashed once, but whatever, I just restarted it. And then, so you don't get the data on it. So you kind of have to catch it happening. And so there's evil bugs like that we've taken a really long time to fix. But
yeah, then if you lose a call a year, maybe you don't even notice or don't report it even.
But our sleuthing power has gotten really good over the years.
Does this work? Yeah, it's not just the bugs too. Like when we're going, because we use, we're not just builders of FreeSWITCH, we are users of FreeSWITCH too. And before we put something into production, before we upgrade from, Debian 10 to 11 to 12, we also want to make sure that there's no regressions in performance, right? Because there's all these changes to all these libraries, and sometimes things turn up. And I know like we're digging into. I think we're starting to see a little bit of regression in performance with 12, which is why we're not quite using 12 yet in production. But part of like what we'll do is we'll dig into that and figure that out and figure out what is it that we have to update inside of FreeSWITCH to make sure that we keep getting, the best performance that's expected with FreeSWITCH, and if there's anything we can do, and then we can give recommendations, to our customers and the community on how to navigate that.
Absolutely. Yeah, the RSC channel is no more, but we have a SignalWire community Slack that also acts as the FreeSWITCH help channel, and Brian doesn't no longer just tell you short answers.
Has a bot do it for him.
Yeah. Cool. Well, going back to the cloud discussion earlier, like you were saying that clusters has always been in the future of FreeSWITCH and in general in the future of computing, and I tend to agree. Do you think there's a case where FreeSWITCH will start moving towards a local deployment model while offloading some of the bigger operations to the cloud? Because I'm starting to see that in architecture. So it's maybe with edge systems, 5G, whatnot. Do you think that could work?
I think so. I mean, this has happened before with even physical systems. It's the architecture of having like a central hub and then distributing. Because sometimes, for instance, like the internet's pretty fast now. You don't always have like gigabits going into your, like most people do in their house and stuff, but you can't count on it. And a lot of times people that rely on voice over IP might not be in an area where they've been graced with such a thing yet. So there's still places where like people are grateful to have like one data T1 line for like a whole village or something, or like there's just places where like the bandwidth might not be flowing quite as well. So you can solve for things like that, but instead of having every phone call from every telephone like going into the cloud, you can trunk into the server so that the legs that are going from like locally, so that you reduce like latency and likelihood of packet loss or saturation, because the phones are communicating over on-prem FreeSWITCH or whatnot, or you could make a little PBX out of a FreeSWITCH and then have an upstream parent, because then you wouldn't have to deploy, like if you had like say offices all over the world, like you wouldn't need to put everything everywhere, right? You can make like a cloud, welcome to this company, what do you want to do, and whatever way you want to do it, futuristic robots or old school robots, or even something super simple. You can do that once, and then you route the calls once you figure out where they want to go to the 10 locations, and then that local server is just basically ringing the phones.
Plus, you can
stuff
make
like that.
you can make FreeSWITCH pretty small by only loading a few modules. So if you're running on a
Well, maybe it'll spoil, so I won't say. But I saw someone running FreeSWITCH on something pretty small this week.
oh.
But I have seen it in the past on even like the worst Raspberry Pi. So
Yeah, if you're just shuttling around calls with no transcoding or whatever, you can probably run a few tens of calls on a Raspberry.
Len had it on a Frisbee.
yeah, that's right. Len had it on a Frisbee. It was taking calls while it was flying through the air.
Yeah, it was a dangerous demo a few years ago. Also remember the FreeSWITCH running on a Raspberry that was wrapped into bubble wrap and then bounced along the room while it kept going. So
It's kind of designed to assimilate its environment, right? So you put it somewhere wimpy like that, it will deal with it. Like, because it was created in a time when it was like CentOS 5 was the nicest OS, and so it still has all that. Like, as it got better, it switches strategies on. So the core and how it operates and does the timing and keeps the calls running and everything. If it was on a Raspberry Pi, it kind of tests for what it has, like resources available, and it becomes, we've always kind of designed it where you don't have a database. Okay, it'll be its own database. It'll be its own config system. Like it doesn't really know if it's going to have any luxuries or not. Because in the days when we were building it, there were no like packages. Even if, there were embedded systems back then, but then people were hacking their way onto it, and they'd have to cross-compile everything, so you didn't have all the dependencies that you have now. So the FreeSWITCH basically needed to bring with its own things that it needed to be able to do. So you're limited in what you could do. So it kind of still has all that when you need it. So that's why if you run it on like a 100-core server, it kind of spreads out and takes advantage of all those things. And if you run it on a little baby computer, then it deals with that differently.
yeah, I think that's, again, the idea that we will move towards a decentralized method where you have multiple small nodes running local traffic, and then they go up to the cloud for bigger things. In essence, it's just what we're already doing with 5G, where those edge computing instances, where they will run the first line of communication and then go through the backhaul to access things like AI or whatnot. In fact,
Mutations like that. You could also maybe you have enough bandwidth, but you don't want to have complexity on your site. You can also register all your devices to a cloud, and then manage things that way too. Depends on where you are. So the idea is do it the way that makes sense for you, because we're not trying to do stuff for people. That's one of our big tenet is most other people are forcing you to do it the way they want you to, and we're not. We give you building blocks on purpose, because we make more than one way to do things. Maybe that's because me and Brian are addicted to Perl, and rubbed off on us or something. But that's what we think about that, because developers want to develop stuff. They don't want to just use something they have no control over. Control is pretty big.
I do love Perl, but sometimes I have to read through your scripts. I had to remember things I learned a long time ago. Still, Perl still works, and works quite well. It's a great language, and we don't really remember. I think, although the most popular module for FreeSWITCH is probably Lua. What do you think? In
SIP
out there.
Sophia?
Well, yeah. I mean, language model.
Yeah, language. Sure.
Language model. Certainly, Lua is the most.
We started with Perl, because that's what we liked, and it works really well, except it's super dangerous because Perl itself is like a monster inside. The C code for it and how you do its embeddings, and they started generating them. They generate the embeddings with CPAN modules made directly from C code with SWIG and all that kind of thing. And some people handwrite them, but you have all these crazy C macros and stuff, and it's so easy to. It's almost terrifying as a C programmer who also loves Perl to see what the Perl is doing in the C side of things. It feels like complete waste. It feels like this Henry VIII eating slobby grapes compared to when you're so used to saving every byte of memory from C code. It just every time you just change the setting on a variable, it makes a whole new allocation and copies it, and why are you doing it like this? But so there's all kinds of scary things in there, and it would work really well, but it would also be just unstable in the way that you as the user might make a mistake in the way you implemented your Perl code that could lead to the whole FreeSWITCH crashing, right? So we didn't like that happening. And when we did JavaScript, which I actually thought was pretty cool, we were going to do voice XML.
Oh yeah.
And we thought okay. If voice XML wants to be cool, why are you selling it to people when no one has ever used it before? They're just going to say, out of the blue, introducing this new thing, and you have to pay money not only to run it, but to create it. Even the editors on voice XML cost money, so we're like, well, that's not going to happen. How is this going to take off? There's a cold start issue there. But we're going to make an open source module for it, voice XML for FreeSWITCH. And we went to do it, and it's just one absurdity after the other, right? It's fun to read if you guys are bored. But it would turn XML into JSON, XML into JavaScript, and then try and run it, and they had all these conformities you have to do that were strange. So I started looking at it, and I got as far as the JavaScript interpreter, and why are you going any further than this? This is cool. I'm just going to take the JavaScript interpreter, and now I can write IVRs in JavaScript. That's probably the beginning of some of the stuff we're doing now, because we made that a long time ago, and we're like, this is more than enough. Just write JavaScript. You already know it. So we had that, and that one was pretty popular for a long time because it was very versatile. And the Lua one came along because there's also some similar JavaScript issues with garbage collection and those kinds of things, and we were like, okay, Lua is made to be embeddable. The other ones kind of weren't. They after the fact got kind of chainsawed into being embeddable, but Lua is it's almost implemented an assembly stack. They wanted you to embed it in things. You can run scripts from the command line and whatever, but it was very well lent to being safe and secure for being embedded. So that one went for pretty far. That one got really stable because it was harder to shoot yourself in the foot with it, although there were a few you could call certain functions that would make the entire FreeSWITCH process gracefully quit, like from your Lua script. So we had to do some overriding there. But like, you know, from there it was just, that was sort of the beginning of like, that's cool. IVR should be written in languages and not like weird. You should be able to express it and not have to like set them up physically. So, and that kind of went, and then we ended up making like event socket and all that stuff. And then we found limitations in that because people would start putting 5 million calls on it at once, and like the socket was overwhelmed and their app would choke because it couldn't read the events fast enough. And then, so like, how do you spread that around and all that stuff? So like, these are kind of like, we already knew that we should, that's why I say back in 2008, the things we were doing now were already clear that we had to fix them. So that's when it started. When we started doing the embedded language stuff, we were learning quickly that like, this has to be kind of clustered and scaled out otherwise. Like one box just gets a little sad when you're like trying to come at it from like 4,000 different angles at once.
Sure. Yeah, I think in a sense, that's been a continuum. Like we started from embeddable languages, and now we got to programmable telecom. So there's a lot in there. So on the show I ran, which is ClueCon Weekly, which I picked up from David a few years ago, I always like to ask a couple practical questions to guests. So Chris, you've seen a lot of large-scale FreeSWITCH deployments. You've designed and overseen a lot of them. What do you think are the things people starting to use FreeSWITCH today should be aware of? Do you need to be aware of resources? What's the best way to get started? What would be your recommendation?
Well, so this topic was, you know, I mean, ClueCon is now 20 years, and I just remember the first few times, when I was first doing this, I wanted to learn more about how do we set these things up, and there were people that were pretty experienced at doing that, and I went to ClueCon and saw, and they would all show like the nice diagrams of this is how you put it all together and this is how you do it, and hasn't changed much other than now we do a lot of virtualization and containers and all that other stuff. But yeah, I mean, number one, I like to use FreeSWITCH for the things that FreeSWITCH is good at, right? Really good at, you know, manipulating the media, bridging different types of call legs together, you know, all that kind of magic. And then you mix in things like Kamailio and OpenSIPs to handle the things that it's, you know, those actually everything's all kind of converging and everything can almost do everything now. But those products are really good at being like your line of defense from the outside, right? Because those they can handle a lot of abuse. They got a lot of modules to detect all the things that can go wrong. So like the big, like real big gotchas there are like fraud, right? It's really hard to secure SIP. And if you're not careful, if you just download, you know, FreeSWITCH or whatever and put it on the public internet and you just got the vanilla dial plan and you hook it up to one of your providers, you know, you're going to be in for a world of hurt. So you got to be careful, lock things down pretty well, use, you know, and take advantage of using stuff like Kamailio and OpenSIPs to, you know, spray your traffic and load balance it across your infrastructure. And also, you know, bugs that affect 1 in 1,000 calls leads to a lot of support tickets, right? So you gotta, like, everything has to work. You have to be relentless at squashing all these little bugs because they're gonna drive you nuts if you don't. You're never gonna sleep. So you can't let the small things go. And, you know, go on YouTube and find all the old ClueCon presentations and there's a lot of knowledge out there on how to do it.
That's amazing.
There's a few on there that I do like deep dives into like XML curl and things like that. So there's really good, none of that has changed either. So if the video's, you know, 5, 6, 7, 8 years old, all of that is still relevant and up to date. We try not to do backwards breaking changes. You know, we've only made 4, I think, changes, and they were slight behavior changes. And I wrote up big documents about them, but nobody reads. and they still file tickets on those, but it's easy to spot because it's just very minor, like differences in like codec negotiation, fax negotiation, and things like that. We made minor changes because it made sense.
Good. Well, another question I usually ask is, what's being worked on in a project right now? So maybe Jakub knows. So what are the next patches or releases that are coming? Do you think there's anything in particular that needs to be mentioned, or is it just improvements?
Yeah, we are doing lots of improvements. There are, some static, scanners like scan build, coverity. So we are, constantly fixing the issues which are reported by these tools. Yeah, so this is like, constant work, and then upgrades as well. I'm not sure, yeah, Debian 12 is now there, and ARM as well, so we mentioned that. Yeah, so these are the next steps.
It's a huge pile. We've got a very large pile of things, and so they're constantly chipping away at it.
But those many dependencies, just the security scans are a source of quite a bit of work for sure. Plus Debian changes, etc. Well, I think well, first of all, let me thank you, all of you, for from the community, for FreeSWITCH. And I mean, I wouldn't be here if I didn't get FreeSWITCH. I was working at a completely different line of business. I was working in high throughput computing. We're doing calculations, and then one day I got bored and I got a side project building a phone system for the Italian government, and I found FreeSWITCH. And it was very fun, and here I am. I will be doing something entirely different. So, well, I think the future holds a lot of interesting developments with the cloud coming down, the edge computing, but there's ways the project can stay relevant. So, last question I always ask on the show is, what does the FreeSWITCH project need right now from the community? Is there something in particular you'd like to ask, like maybe, do we need more documentation? Do we need help filing bugs? What will you ask the contributors, if you could? Well, you can, you're here. They're hearing you.
This thing, there it goes. Well, we do have a community call. It's the first Thursday, is it? I'll have to double check the scheduling, but I'd show up at that. If you have, you want to get involved, come visit us in that phone call. Bring any issues or questions. We work together to if you have a pull request that's pending or a bug, we can give you guidance. We can tell you how to help you better. Like Tony said, a lot of what we do these days is just outside looking in, trying to debug what people are trying to describe as problems and then come to solutions. So it's a lot of fun sometimes.
Oh.
Just being here is helping. FreeSWITCH is supported, by its patrons. So any of the services that we offer is a nice way to keep the project running, and it's actually a win-win scenario rather than just giving donations. We try and do products and services that help. So we can always do that as well. But we love bug reports and patches and all that on GitHub too.
Good, yeah, so get involved.
Yeah, complete bug reports are good too.
Yeah. Doesn't work is not a bug report, please. We've had some of those.
We're also, if there's, I know that, Sandro from Naval Security has been sending us some security vulnerability reports. Anybody in the community that wants to hack at FreeSWITCH and find all the ways that you can wreck it, we love to hear about that. So, contact us, security@signalwire.com, and we'll work with you to continue to harden FreeSWITCH against all those people out there that want to make, free phone calls or infiltrate your systems.
Well, I have a couple of good stories about security. First of all, last year we did a test where we put a completely unsecured FreeSWITCH server on a digital OCN node, so unknown IP address. And it took 2 minutes and 4 seconds to start getting scans, and I got hacked in around 4 minutes. It didn't have outbound trunks, so there was no traffic to steal. The other time was when we did the same thing, thinking it was the development box, but it had the production trunks configuration. Lost $7,000 of traffic in an hour. So be careful.
Is this working? There we go. And when you first set up FreeSWITCH, there's a default password in there, and you see the nice 10-second big warning when you make your first phone call for you to change your password. I had to add that because people kept not changing their passwords.
Yeah, that has to be. Well, in fact, we got hacked by leaving the default password on, which is...
I'm going to change it to generate that. I think I'm going to change it to generate one on install.
So you can't have 1, 2, 3, 4.
Yeah, I just hadn't gotten around to it yet.
Yeah, it's very important. Well, again, I think we're a good spot here. Thank you very much again. I would like a big round of applause for Anthony Minessale, Brian West, Mike Jerris, Chris Rienzo, Jakub Karolczyk for joining us today. Sorry? Of course, yeah. That's a good idea. So, yeah, who's going to be first? Come on, that bug you've been chasing for 10
Jack never lets us
months.
down with a question. Well done, that man.
Is it okay if I ask one more question? I've been asking questions all day. So have you seen the Verizon presentation, the security presentation, where they set up a honeypot? They set up thousands of phone numbers in their space for all their NPA NSXs, and then characterized all of the robocalls that they received, and using some of the stir-shaken data, used it as a way of going after bad actors. Has anyone asked you to help facilitate setting up honeypots? You know what I mean? You actually just, robocallers will call you. They'll find your phone number, because they'll just random phone numbers. You answer, and you play an announcement. This is being recorded for analytics purposes, and then let the scammer do their thing, record it, then run it through Whisper, and then categorize it.
Nice.
Have you heard of this? I don't know. See, I asked this because maybe they're using your stuff to do it.
Well, it is probable, I want to say.
I do know FreeSWITCH is in AT&T's lab for sure, and I'm pretty sure T-Mobile has it as well.
Yeah. I can tell you the AT&T has FreeSWITCH. I put it in there.
It does sound like a fun project. I mean, so this honeypot, was there AI or something on the other side responding to the telemarketer?
They were doing no.
No?
It was recording data.
Oh.
It was just simply recording data, and because they were running Whisper, they run an AI classification algorithm.
Okay.
And there's basically 20. Well, according to the researcher, there were 20 categories to classify into. So just used the standard AI classification algorithms, classified them, and then made histograms of what the hot ones were and went after them.
Well, it sounds like we could add our bot to that. We can make an enhanced Lenny to really keep them busy.
I'm just asking because you mentioned it in the security space. It's an example of how people who have blocks of numbers can use their blocks of numbers for good when those numbers are idle otherwise.
Yeah, we could do that. And Anthony built so you saw the debate bot yesterday. One we heard last week when he was testing was the old lady time waster for spammers. We could use one of those. That was really great. It's variation on Lenny, but it's an old lady, and she looks like she's trying to do what the scammer is saying, but then there's always a problem. Like instead of her credit card, she has a Kroger card, a supermarket card. And she reads that, and then no, that's not a credit card. Sorry, let me go grab my purse. In the spirit
of the public good, as opposed to,
Well, but adding an interaction will be even more fun. So again, to get more info.
A shared RBL would be nice from all the data, right? So you could subscribe to it and do a REST call. We could make a module for it, and then you could check it first and decide if you want to place a call still if it's known to. And we did that with email, and it got a little out of hand sometimes. But if you add a little bit of like human verification to it,
Yeah, it's interesting how it has worked for email, but not really for phone numbers. There's been email spam lists for decades now, and they work sort of. Sometimes you get stuck. Well, any other questions?
He's got a question over here.
Related to that last topic, the API guy is here. And that sounds like the natural next step is he's doing IPs and SIP traffic. Why not go for numbers too?
Yeah, that's
Yeah, it's actually possible now with the shake and stir. Before, people would just spoof them and then they'd get the wrong numbers turned off. But now we have a little bit more insight to make sure we're not making false positives on it.
Yeah, we should be able to track it now, right? Who has the number?
well, and maybe we'll fix the microphones too.
Great. Okay. I think we've got time for one more if there is one, and then we better close.
Very close.
Okay, I think people are very excited to win a speaker. I think that's what's going
Yeah,
on here.
yeah, you're right.
So, Luca has said thank you to the whole panel. Let's say thank you to Luca and the whole panel.